In my previous life, I remained unmarried all my life to take care of my brother. In this life, we are reborn together. The first thing he did upon being reborn was to send me away, replacing me with the destined fake heiress. He abandoned me, still in my swaddling clothes, on the street. Don't blame me for being heartless. Who asked you to kill Jian? I was born on a day of continuous rain in the south. Qin Ziyuan, the eldest son of the Qin family, took 3 days off. He rushed back to his hometown in his school uniform. No one knows that elementary school student with a straight back and steady gaze. In the soul, memories of 2 eras are hidden. He had just been reborn, returning with a heart full of regrets from his previous life. He didn't even glance at me, his own sister. Instead, he secretly bribed the delivery nurse to rightfully present the child who had been mistakenly swapped in his previous life to our parents. I was carried out of the hospital by him, placed into a crude cardboard box. We took a bus together to the outskirts, and the girl in the swaddling clothes, crying louder than me, wearing the bloodline of the so-called Qin family, she would become the little sister Qin who would be cherished by everyone in the future. The thing Qin Ziyuan regretted most in his previous life was that decades of time had worn away the rest of his life, causing him to miss the girl who became a flight surgeon for her. And I, the real younger sister, returned home at the age of 18, never married in her lifetime. She willingly learned rehabilitation medicine for him, helped the paralyzed him stand up from his wheelchair. All he longed for was the fake heiress I had given up on, the Qin family of Guangdong, a loyal and righteous household in the previous life, recognized by the nation. The military regent's publicity reports produced 3 issues in a row. In this life, he would rewrite everything. At any cost, I lay in the cradle, quietly opening my eyes. In this life, I have also been reborn. In my previous life, my fake sister and I were switched at the hospital. She became the eldest daughter of the Qin family, while I was sent to an ordinary working-class family. At the age of 3, a car accident left me completely without support. I was sent to an orphanage. From then on, I lived in fear for over a decade. The fake daughter, however, grew up pampered and indulged in the Qin family. She became Qin Ziyun. She was the pearl in the eyes of the Qin family, the only sister in her brother's eyes. She could attend school to learn to read and write, study dance and piano. She could go abroad for further studies and be liked by everyone. And I was only brought back to the Qin family when I turned 18 that year. I wore the old cloth shoes and plain cotton skirt given by the orphanage, carrying a worn-out suitcase. I walked through the gates of the Qin mansion. I saw my brother standing in the courtyard, standing tall and straight, clad in military uniform. He stood against the light, yet he frowned as he looked at me. So you're Pei Ling, why do you seem so timid? My brother is a pilot under the nation's key training program. Qin Jian became an outstanding aviation doctor. In the photo, they stood shoulder to shoulder, smiling brilliantly. It wasn't until that year that I went to visit my brother in the military. The plane crashed, and my brother and Qin Jian were both pinned under the plane's wing, waiting for rescue. The doctor anxiously asked me to choose. I'm sorry, we can only save one first. I paused for a moment and said, save my brother. Everyone accused me of causing the death of the fake heiress, but I have no regrets. I began to study rehabilitation on my own, providing round-the-clock care. It took 10 years for my brother to leave his wheelchair and regain his dignity. I never married, taking care of my brother until his twilight years. As my brother lay on his deathbed, his pale hand rested on my fingertips. His voice was weak, but every word pierced my heart, peeling. I would rather you had saved Jian back then. I stood frozen in place, like being hit by a 1,000-pound boulder. Originally, even at the very end, he never once, in his heart, thanked me. He carried the box a long way, riding through the old town from the hospital, arriving at the most remote street in the eastern part of the city. Finally, at the entrance of a dilapidated alley overgrown with weeds, he crouched down. He looked at me in the box, his face slightly pale, lips tightly pressed, peeling. He spoke softly, his hands trembling. Don't blame your brother. Jian died too tragically. In her previous life, she died because of you. I don't blame you, but she really should have lived carefree. He placed me in the shadows at the entrance of the alley with a small hand. Cover me with the swaddling cloth. Someone will definitely pass by here. Live a normal life for the rest of your life. He stood up, his eyes slightly red, but stubbornly turned his face away, peeling. All I ask is that you never appear again in this lifetime. He left, without looking back, and I, with my consciousness reborn, was already clear-headed, only, unable to speak. I lay in the shadows, watching that figure recede into the distance. My heart remained cold. The rain poured down in torrents. I opened my eyes again. The sky was as gray as a tattered cloth, and the wind rustled the leaves at the alley entrance. He had long since disappeared. I was just born, my body was extremely weak. I didn't even have the strength to cry in my throat. I could only produce indistinct whimpers. The rain soaked my swaddling clothes. I started to have a fever, burning so intensely that my vision turned white faintly. I could hear the sound of wild dogs tearing at something in the distance, like claws tearing at the heart. I couldn't move, can only look up at this unfamiliar sky. Recalling past lives, I devoted my entire life to studying medicine, studying rehabilitation, caring for my brother for 40 years, but all I got in return was, I wish you had saved Jian. In this lifetime, the first thing he did after being reborn was to drive me out of the Qin family. I closed my eyes, the scent of earth and rain filling my nose. Awareness, bit by bit, dissipates until a gentle female voice arises. What sound is that? A kitten. A deeper voice follows, with a hint of teasing. Then let's take it back. Aren't you the one who loves little cats the most? In the darkness, light filters through faintly. It's the light of rain hitting the street lamp, the diffused light of distant car headlights. It was also the first glimmer of hope I could grasp in my drowsy consciousness. I saw an umbrella. It opened in the wind and rain, and beneath it was a beautiful face with an elegant grace. Her hair was wet from the rain, clinging to her cheeks the moment she saw me. Her eyes softened but carried a hint of urgency. Zay, hurry and drive to the hospital. It's a child. Her voice trembled, speaking rapidly. Clearly, she was deeply frightened. In the next moment, I was gently lifted out of the box by her. The swaddling cloth was soaked, so she took off her coat and wrapped it around me. She cradled me entirely in her arms. There was a very pleasant scent about her, like osmanthus mixed with medicinal fragrance, warm enough to make one want to cry. I leaned against her, whispering and panting with warm breath. Consciousness drifts uncertainly. She hugged me tightly and whispered a curse. Damn it, never expected to encounter something like this on an official trip. She's burning up, her lips are turning blue. The man's voice came from the side, slightly hoarse. I'll go get the car, we can't delay this. She gently soothed me. Don't be afraid, baby. Auntie will take you to see the doctor. The high fever that night subsided. I lay on the snow-white hospital bed. When I opened my eyes, Li Shuhe was dozing off by the bedside. Her fingertips were still resting on my hand. I moved my fingers, and she woke up immediately. First, I was stunned, then my eyes reddened. Awake, baby, you're really lucky to be alive. Later on, the doctor said my temperature was stable and my vital signs were normal. They stood by the window, discussing in low voices. Take her away. Li Shuhe's tone was resolute. I've been to the orphanage. They don't necessarily treat the children well. She's too young. Sending her there won't do. Zhao Xija frowned. But our pace of life, raising a child doesn't take much time. Zhao Xija remained silent for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's go back and go through the procedures. That day, a black sedan with a Beijing license plate drove from the old alleys of the southern coastal area back to the military compound in the north. I was officially adopted and given the name Zhao Qi. Zhao is my father's surname, and Chu is my mother's hometown. Yi is the character she chose for me, inspired by my gentle and serene eyes. And Yi, Shani, may you grow up safe and sound. From now on, I have a new life. Father Zhao Xija, a senior official in the military and political institutions of the capital, born into an intellectual family, with a distinguished career in Beijing. He is a well-known figure. Mother Li Shuhe, a young researcher at the Chinese Academy of Sciences, a daughter of the heavens, yet gentle in nature. She loves cats and flowers the most, and is also the best at taking care of people. They are a newlywed couple. After adopting me, they didn't plan to have their own child. Children are gifts from heaven, that's what mother said. We should give her a new life. They never treated me poorly, from infant formula to learning to read, from illnesses to losing baby teeth, from the first high fever to the first time writing and receiving an award. Every step of the way, they accompanied me personally, and I, in turn, regarded them as my entire world. More than a decade passed in the blink of an eye, time fleeting like a white horse galloping past a crack. I grew from an abandoned infant into a young woman with clear eyes and brows, exuding a calm and steady demeanor, as if everything were just the dawn of a great dream. When I awoke, the wind had already changed direction. In 1986, on the day I graduated from military school, I only wrote one sentence: applied to join the 1st Squadron of the Guangdong Air Force. Serving as a political officer, everyone was surprised. My father also once doubted whether I had filled out the form incorrectly. Chui, you've always had good grades and a steady personality. Why do you have to go so far away when you could work in an office job anywhere? I smiled and said, Dad, I just have a wish that hasn't been fulfilled yet. No one knows that base in the south. It was the starting point in my previous life where fate completely turned around, and also the end point of the ending. Sun Jiaqing, the older brother from the Sun family in the compound, coincidentally, also signed up for The pilot exam, the target is also the first squadron. After hearing about it, he teased me from behind. Chewie, little sister, did you go there for me? I glanced at him indifferently. You're overthinking. He laughed carefreely and clung to me every day. He insisted on dragging me along on the day of the military competition. No way, you have to come with me and cheer me on. I didn't want to go, but I couldn't resist him in the end, so, under the scorching sun, I stood by the viewing stand, listening to the instructor's commands, applause, and the roaring sounds around me just as I took a sip of water, but my gaze collided with two familiar figures in the crowd, Qin Ziyuan, Qin Jian, my brother, and the one wearing the flight medical uniform. With a gentle smile, the fake heiress, my fingers tightened slightly, my palms cold. This fateful reunion came much sooner than I had imagined. My brother's gaze passed through the crowd, lingering for a long time. In an instant, it felt as if I had returned to that day in my past life. The sunlight was blazing white, and the wind rustled the gardenia flowers in the courtyard. Everything seemed as peaceful as before the incident, yet, beneath the surface, turbulent undercurrents had long been stirring. Qin Jian prepared a banquet specially to celebrate her brother's successful completion of flight training. She wore a white dress, her smile radiant, like the gentlest girl in the world. That day, I accidentally caught a glimpse she was in the back kitchen, putting medicine into her brother's cup. I quietly swapped that cup of water and hid it away. I took the remaining liquid to have it tested. The moment the test results came back, my heart pounded like a drum. The effects of the drug can induce brief confusion and suppress the brain's rational judgment. I found her and asked her directly, "Why did you drug my brother?" She remained calm and unhurried, smoothing the hem of her skirt as she looked down, her smile still gentle. "Don't misunderstand, I just feel that some things, I want to speed up a bit." I shook my head. "You don't need to go to all this trouble. Brother has always protected you and listened to everything you say." She paused slightly, her eyes shifting gently, and whispered softly, "But there will always be someone who tries to stop me." When she said that, her tone was too light, yet it sent a chill down my spine. I suddenly realized something. Before my parents died, they didn't particularly like Qin Jian. Even at a family gathering, my mother said publicly, "Jian, you and Ziyuan are both grown up now. There's a difference between men and women. He will marry and have children in the future, and you will marry someone else too. You can't always cling to Ziyuan." Later on, my parents died unexpectedly at a young age. I wasn't without my suspicions, but I can't provide any evidence, nor can I convince anyone, especially my brother. I urged him to wake up, but he wouldn't listen. I demanded he throw her out, but he said it in a low voice, pealing, "Don't go too far. I understand that you don't like her, but she's Jian. We grew up together. How could she possibly harm anyone? In any case, I won't let her leave." He didn't believe it. Even if she drugged him, even if their parents died under suspicious circumstances, he still didn't believe it. He always thinks I'm being unreasonable and acting out of jealousy. In her previous life, after her parents passed away, Qin Jian confessed her feelings to her brother, but was rejected. Not long after, the fighter jet malfunctioned during landing. The wing broke off, and the aircraft caught fire upon impact. Inside the cockpit, Qin Ziyuan was severely injured and fell into a coma. As the accompanying flight doctor, Qin Jian was pinned under the plane but remained conscious. Upon hearing the news, I immediately boarded a military vehicle. The doctor told me, "Miss Qin, we can only save one." Qin Jian gritted his teeth and shouted, "Save me? I can't hold on much longer. Save me first." I grabbed the doctor and cried out urgently, "Save my brother quickly. He's a pilot. He's still alive. Please save him first." The doctor hesitated for a moment, then turned back and shouted loudly, "Stretcher, oxygen, ECG monitor, hurry, at any time. The pilot's life always comes first. This is the most basic principle of treatment, and it's common sense." Even if it had been both my brother and me who were in danger that day, I would have unhesitatingly told the doctor to save him first. My brother was lifted onto the ambulance. I was frozen in fear by the eyes of Qin Jian beneath the wreckage of the fuselage. It was a gaze, mingled with despair and madness, like someone whose wishes remain unfulfilled, finally deciding to drag everything into the abyss. The plane exploded. Qin Jian died in that accident. I became the one in that accident who was most unforgivable. The day I woke up from the coma, for the first time, my brother's eyes showed hatred towards me. "Peeling," he said, "if it weren't for you, Jian wouldn't have died." He spent 50 years ruminating over these words. It wasn't until the moment before his death that he told me, "I wish it had been her you saved back then. This life, everything starts anew." In the base of Flight Unit 001, someone is quietly inquiring about me. It's Qin Ziyuan. He stood at the edge of the training ground, watching me run laps over and over. His gaze steady and focused. He pretended to casually pull Sun Jiaqing aside, his tone nonchalant. That girl, is she your partner? Sun Jiaqing smiled. You mean Chui, the new political commissar. We came out together from the military compound in Beijing. What's your name? He asked again, whispering the name once more, as if trying to find some clues from his memory. Zhao Chui. He paused, a peculiar emotion flickering in his eyes. Qin Jian, standing beside him, had already taken everything in. She withdrew her gaze and her smile. Brother, you wouldn't be interested in her, would you? Chen Ziyuan turned back and said calmly, just a new junior staff member, not worth mentioning, yet his tone carried a hint of inquiry and testing. In the following days, he began to appear frequently around me, training ground, cafeteria, political classroom, even after the meeting, pretending to bump into me by chance. He greeted me softly, Comrade Zhao, what a coincidence. I nodded faintly, polite yet distant. Pilot Chen, he was taken aback, not brother, not Ziyuan Ge, just a cold, formal address. I deliberately acted as if I didn't recognize him. He became even more determined not to give up. From time to time, he would make indirect inquiries. Have you ever lived in the South before? I always feel like you look familiar. I've always lived in the capital, I said with a smile. This is my first time coming to the South. In every conversation, I carefully maintained proper boundaries, knowing when to advance and when to retreat. I am not seeking revenge. I simply have no intention of walking that old path again. This time, I no longer acknowledged him, and Qin Jian had long noticed his unusual behavior. She came to talk to me, her tone gentle yet sharp-edged. Comrade Chui, men and women in the military are clearly distinguished. Stay away from my brother. I smiled and nodded. You should say that to your brother. It was her brother who had been trying to get closer to me all along. Qin Jian misunderstood her brother's intentions towards me and made moves against me both openly and covertly. The political work meeting materials were secretly swapped. On the day of the health inspection, my bed was rumpled. These tactics were both immature and clumsy, yet they were enough for her to portray my incompetence in front of a crowd. I countered each move, watching coldly from the sidelines. In my previous life, I knew nothing and thought she was gentle and considerate, always yielding to her, only to be laughed at by others. But this time, I am no longer the little girl who could be manipulated at will. If she wrongs me, I will teach her a good lesson. On the day of the meeting materials, I had already made a copy and stored it in the archive room, waiting for her to switch them. The instructor angrily demanded an explanation from me. I directly took out the original document from the filing cabinet, calmly responding, since someone wanted to tamper with it, I naturally had to keep a copy. The crowd erupted in surprise. During the health inspection, I was already prepared and had left a surveillance recording, not electronic surveillance, but a veteran cadre writing reports, quietly taking notes. He noticed my bed looked like it had been rummaged through. With a raised eyebrow, he picked up his notebook and wrote down suspected malicious damage. That evening, at the public self-criticism meeting of the political work department, the name of the malicious saboteur appeared in the meeting announcement, Qin Jian, repeatedly provoking comrades, undermining unit unity, suspended from flight training, and required to write a written inspection. She looked at me in disbelief. I calmly closed the material in my hands. I stood up and said, in the face of military discipline, everyone is equal. You are a flight doctor, not part of a privileged class. As soon as I spoke, the entire meeting room fell silent. Standing behind me is the Zhao family. It's Zhao Xija from the military district headquarters, and Li Shuha from the Academy of Sciences. Teach her a lesson without making a scene. It's a warning. If she doesn't learn her lesson, I still have plenty of methods. Military training. A month-long training session at the Beijing General Team. I had just settled into the dormitory when I heard someone was looking for me at the reception. It was Chen Ziyuan who had come. He was dressed in a neatly pressed flight suit, with a furrowed brow. He got straight to the point as soon as he entered. Zhao Chui, did you make inappropriate advances towards Jiyan? I looked up at him, expressionless, but with a hint of mockery in my eyes. She says you've been targeting her everywhere, accusing her behind her back of stealing materials, damaging the dormitory, and now publicly embarrassing her in meetings. His tone carried a note of accusation. Don't you think you owe her an explanation? I laughed. This life, he really is just like his past life, only hearing her one-sided words. He came charging at me to question me, never asking if I was willing, never considering the truth of the matter. He thought I was still that timid, subservient little girl. I stood up, my back straight, and asked coldly, Pilot Chen, what identity are you speaking to me as? Superior officer, relative, or the sweetheart of Qin Jian? He was taken aback, his expression slightly frozen. She's my sister. What are you talking nonsense about? I continued to laugh. If you want to stand up for her, that's fine. But first figure out what I did and whether it's worth your intervention. I swapped the meeting materials, and I had a backup draft ready in advance. The bed was turned over, and I reported it to the political work department, with records on file. You say I embarrassed her, but our military is not about personal relationships, it's about rules. I looked at him, my tone growing even colder. Chen Ziyuan, you should get used to it. Not everyone is still revolving around you like they used to. He was stunned for a moment. I sneered. As for your current status and hers, I truly can't bring myself to care. If you hadn't repeatedly stirred up trouble, I wouldn't have bothered to intervene. His expression turned extremely unpleasant. The wind was strong at the door, so I turned and went back inside, leaving only these words: if you continue to protect her, then I'll consider you birds of a feather. Even if you have a good relationship with Jiaqing, don't blame me for turning ruthless. Get out. The door slammed shut, and the entire hallway fell silent. Let him sober up, in this lifetime. Who is the one who deserves to be shown respect? The incident of Chen Ziyuan coming to question me reached Sun Jiaqing's ears the very next day. During the lunch break, he stormed into my office, fuming with anger. Chui, tell me the truth, is someone in the military bullying you? I was bent over reviewing documents and didn't even look up. No, he gave a cold laugh. Even if you don't say it. I know. I heard you made someone cry at the political work meeting, and then those two actually had the nerve to turn the tables and accuse you of throwing your weight around. I raised an eyebrow. Where did you hear that? None of your business where I heard it. He waved his hand dismissively. Anyway, I'm telling you this, you're the only girl who grew up in our military compound, and we rough guys have been protecting you since we were kids. How could we let two outsiders bully you? I was torn between laughter and tears. Sun Jiaqing, I'm not a porcelain doll. You may not be a porcelain doll, but you're our little sister. He said it with such conviction, his eyes nearly popping out of his head. You forgot who was the first to charge in during those gang fights when you were little. You wrote in your essay, the older boys in the courtyard may have been reckless, but they were the most loyal when it came to fighting. You've only been in the army for a few days, and already someone's trying to push you around. Fine, so you don't take us seriously, huh? With that, he waved his hand, and 3 or 4 familiar faces walked in from behind. They were all pilots, engineers, and logistics officers from the compound. Chui, a guy from the engineering department, handed me a bottle of soda. Don't be afraid, Jiaqing told us. With just one word from you, our entire team will back you up. I laughed out loud. Good brothers, I'm not afraid, I said calmly. Just think it's unnecessary, but since you're here, it's good. Let Chen Ziyuan and the others know that I'm not alone. Sun Jiaqing slapped the table. The afternoon training session hadn't started yet, but a line of people stood at the entrance of the logistics department courtyard at the flight base. Some wore flight suits, others were in standard officer uniforms. There were those in work clothes, and even bespectacled research soldiers. They were all the older brothers I grew up with in the military compound. At the forefront, of course, was Sun Jiaqing. He stood with one hand on his hip and took a bite of the popsicle in the other hand, grinning. I hear someone thinks our little sister is easy to bully. The political officer next to him recognized him. You are, from the Sun family, the One family, the Bai family. Even Liu Yiming, who transferred from our original artillery unit, is here. He turned around and called out the names. Tell them. What status does our Chui hold in the compound? Liu Yiming stepped forward, adjusted his glasses, and said calmly, we've watched her grow up since she was little. She could recite military songs at 5, and by 7, she could explain the reporting process to old Zhao. Who dares to bully her? We'll write a joint letter overnight and send it up. It's not that we're using our power to bully others, it's that we have the ability to protect people. Sun Jiaqing added, exactly, Chui is like our sister. If outsiders want to bully her, go ahead. First, ask if we agree. After their outburst, Chen Ziyuan realized he had made a mistake. He dragged the reluctant Chen Ziyuan to apologize to me in person. The news spread, and the entire flight base knew. Zhao Qi, the only daughter raised in the prestigious Beijing Military University, was the cherished treasure of a group of older soldiers' sons who doted on her. No one dared to gossip, no one dared to privately slander me, even in the political work department, where a few middle-aged female staff members usually looked at me unfavorably. They now greeted me with smiles, knowing it all in their hearts but not saying a word. The people behind me are all willing to go all out for me. More importantly, I myself can hold my ground. It's my birthday. Mom specially flew back from abroad to arrange the restaurant and order the cake herself. I've been asked countless times who was coming. I said there was no need for extravagance, but she was as busy as if she were marrying off a daughter, wishing she could book the entire hotel. All the brothers from the compound came, and Sun Jiaqing joked, with this kind of setup, if our Chui gets married someday, can we still make it this lively? I smiled without saying a word. At the start of the dinner, I suddenly mentioned, Dad, I heard Chen Jian is also celebrating his birthday today, on the same day as me. In the private room next door, my father, a government official, nodded upon hearing this. That's indeed the case. I took a leisurely sip of tea and said, then let's invite her and Chen Ziyuan to join us for dinner. It'll make things livelier. Sun Jiaqing frowned. Are you crazy? Why invite them? This birthday celebration isn't meant to add to the frustration. I smiled, put down my teacup, and said, as I am now, they wouldn't dare bully me anymore, right? He nodded. That's right. With us here, who would dare to bully you? 10 minutes later, Chen Ziyuan and Chen Jian arrived. As soon as they entered, they were met with dozens of tall and upright military officers, seats stretched from the table to the corner, and everyone was smiling, but no one truly welcomed them. Chen Jian was dressed in a snow-white dress, like a literary young woman who had mistakenly wandered into a military camp. Chen Ziyuan glanced at me, his eyes filled with complex emotions. He was probably recalling this day from his past life. Chen Jian and I were celebrating our birthdays together. Guests surrounded her, but no one offered me a single blessing. There wasn't even my name on the cake. I sat in the corner, like a shadow that could be easily overlooked, and now, I am at the center of the light. All the stars surround the moon. Chen Ziyuan and Chen Jian sat down together carefully. The dishes were served one by one. Mother gently placed food in my bowl. This is the sweet and sour pork you loved most as a child. Do you remember? I nodded, and she smiled again, saying, for dessert, I chose the coconut milk jelly you like, and I specially added the red beans you love. I looked down to see a plate of mango sago being pushed in front of me. I turned my head to see Chen Ziyuan's inquisitive smile. He said softly, the mango flavor is also very delicious. Why not try a bite? Sun Jiaqing next to him slammed down his chopsticks. She's allergic to mango. One bite, and she's in the hospital. Are you doing this on purpose? The atmosphere suddenly froze. Chen Ziyuan's face was a bit pale. He was indeed intentional, trying to test me. Mother patted my hand and said, it really was my oversight. I remember clearly instructing the kitchen not to put mango. Chewy can't touch mangoes. This matter, outsiders don't know. Ignorance is not a crime. Father timely resolved the situation, waving to the waiter, take this mango away. Don't. I smiled. Give it to Jian to eat. She loves mangoes the most. Chen Ziyuan froze. I turned to look at him, the corners of my lips curling, my eyes crinkling. Brother Ziyuan. His shoulders trembled slightly. I smiled even more sweetly. My family and friends I'll remember what I like to eat and what I can't eat. I hope you won't knowingly make the same mistake again in the future. His face turned pale, as if he had been slapped hard, yet I held the coconut milk pudding, lowered my head with a smile, and slowly took a bite. It was refreshingly sweet with a hint of coolness. It was the taste of this lifetime favorite taste. I lowered my head, but an old memory suddenly surfaced in my mind. That year, I was 19 and my parents went back to the countryside to take care of my sick grandmother. Chen Jian hastily held a birthday party at home. I also have my birthday on this day. I said I was allergic to mangoes, so I wouldn't attend the party. Chen Ziyuan pushed me over and said with a smile, Jian loves mango cake the most. She gave you the first piece today because she likes you. Do me a favor, just take a bite. It won't hurt, right? I hesitated. He patted my shoulder gently. Don't spoil everyone's fun. I ate it. 10 minutes later, I rushed into the bathroom, vomiting and having diarrhea, my stomach churning like a stormy sea. I called out to them, saying I felt unwell. They didn't hear me. Chen Jian held Chen Ziyuan's hand, laughing as they continued to cut the cake. Maybe big sister is just feeling a bit shy, she said in a sweet voice. She turned around and locked the bathroom door, hanging a sign that read occupied. I unconsciously scratched my neck and face. My head is pounding. Chen Jian said to the guests outside, oh, please don't mind, my sister is hogging the bathroom and won't come out. If anyone needs to use the restroom, you can go to the second floor. I apologize for the inconvenience. Chen Ziyuan stood at the door, coldly saying, what childish tantrum is this? It's just that I didn't give her a gift. If you don't come out now, then don't come out at all. When I heard those words, my mind went buzz. Yes, today is also my birthday. No one remembers. They only remember Jian, cake, flowers, candlelight, and guests. Everything was prepared by her brother. I sat by the toilet, my mind completely blank, too weak to even stand up. I was in a daze, hearing the sounds outside gradually quiet down. I knocked on the door, wanting to call my brother. Brother, could you take me to the hospital? Who is it that barged in back then? I only remember that the person was wearing a pilot's uniform, with a Beijing accent. He squatted down and picked me up, looking a bit puzzled. He had two small tiger teeth and a Clean, gentle voice. Whose kid is this, and why is their face so swollen? Damn, how could someone be burned this badly? Don't be afraid. I'm not a bad person. I'll take you to the hospital right away. Little girl, hang in there. What did he say his name was? Seems like it was Jiaqing. Memory ends. I snap back to reality and look up. Across from me, son Jiaqing is fighting with a few brothers over ice cream. Who ordered the mung bean flavor? No. Remember, Chuyi's favorite is red bean. With milk foam, he spoke with righteous indignation. Like this whole world, no one can forget what I eat. I smiled and looked down. In my previous life, I was almost killed in the bathroom due to a mango allergy. In this life, I was held high and protected in the palm of someone's hand, and that person, from the previous life to this one, it has never changed. The Chen family parents came from Guangdong to Beijing, originally to celebrate Chen Zhiyun's birthday. Upon learning the news, I said to son Jiaqing, brother Jiaqing, it's not convenient for me to show up. Do me a favor and take the Chen family parents for a comprehensive health checkup. Son Jiaqing was suspicious. A physical exam? What for? It's a matter of life and death. When the report came out, the doctor's expression was grim, and he quietly called me into his office. They have been ingesting a chronic neurotoxin over a long period. Fortunately, the amount is small, and with timely control, it can still be reversed. I nodded. Please keep this matter confidential. That night, I sent someone to drive overnight and sneak into the Chen family in Guangdong. Under the bed in Chen Zhiyun's room, we found a medicine bottle with the label already torn off. Later, we traced it back to her purchase of illegal drugs and poisoned Chen's parents in various ways. I threw all the evidence to Chen Ziyuan. You trust her the most, don't you? Look at this. He took the report. His expression shifted from disbelief to anger, then to pallor. He went to find Chen Zhiyun to confirm. She cried and said, Brother, because I like you. Chen Ziyuan was as if struck by lightning, stepping back step by step. Do you know what you're saying? I've always thought of you as a sister. She shook her head. But we're not blood-related siblings. I've known since I was little that I'm not really a member of the Chen family. She bit her lip, her gaze fierce like a wild animal's. Your mother found out. She told me not to have any designs on you in the future, but I refuse. I don't want anyone else. I want to remove every obstacle to our feelings, including our parents. Chen Ziyuan's voice trembled. It was them who wanted to marry me off to someone else. It was them who wouldn't let me get close to you. I had no choice. She spoke incoherently, her whole being already plunged into the abyss of obsession. At that moment, her brother finally understood. The little sister he had once thought was obedient, sensible, and gentle was, deep down, hiding madness. It's done. I plan to leave Guangdong. I'll work overtime tonight and fill out the transfer application in the office. After Chen Ziyuan pushed the door open and entered, he weakly knelt on the ground with a thud, hanging his head low, peeling. It's my fault. I harmed our parents. It's me. I kept making mistakes. I sat before him, looking down at him from above. You've mistaken me for someone else. He lifted his gaze, his voice choked with emotion. I recognize you. I know you're peeling. You love red beans. You have a small mole behind your ear. When you write with your right hand, you have a habit of tilting your head, and when you made a mistake writing a character as a child, you would get so upset you'd cry. I remember it all. Not a trace of emotion showed on my face. What does remembering matter? My voice was icy cold. Does remembering make up for the fact that you personally threw me into the alley and left me there with a high fever, barely clinging to life? He trembled all over. I leaned down, slowly, word by word, looking at him and saying, Chen Ziyuan, you are the executioner, you are the one who killed our parents, and you are the one who personally killed me. You were the one who invited the wolf into the house, you were the one who covered for her, you were the one who handed her the knife and let her succeed. You know, even if you were to be posthumously praised after 100 years, with a monument engraved with a lifetime of glory, in my eyes, you deserve to rot in the 18th level of hell. I turned and left, his heart-wrenching sobs echoing behind me, but I didn't look back, because this time, it shouldn't be me who softens, it's them, who should finally pay for their lives. Chen Zhiyun was reported. The reason was, intentionally poisoning, murdering a family member. I didn't show up myself, just submitted an anonymous document. When she was taken away for investigation, she was still hysterically shouting, it's because I love him, I love my brother too much. This time, she was going to prison. In my previous life, I had sacrificed everything for family, because of my parents' dying wish. Peeling, your brother has poor judgment in people. With mom and dad gone, can you help take good care of him for us? I did as he suggested. I devoted my entire life to their son, until I saw him off on his final journey. But this lifetime is different. This time, I am finally no longer his accessory tool person. I refused his apology and compensation, and I also refused any requests from Chen Ziyuan to see me. I just sneered coldly, "Stop acting out this redemption drama. Get out of the pilot corps." He came to my door, kneeling outside the corps gate, begging me, peeling, "I'm sorry. It was my fault. You can hit me or scold me. Just don't abandon me." I stood inside the door, my tone calm. "I won't let you die. For the sake of our parents' kindness, I'll spare you this once. If you want to atone for your sins, go kneel in the ancestral hall, kneel every day, rain or shine. In our previous life, our parents died with grievances, still worrying about you until their last breath. I guarded them for a lifetime then. Now, it's your turn to take over." His head hit the ground heavily, blood seeping out, but he dared not look up again. I turned and walked away. My biological parents once took me home even though they never gave me much love. Even though they preferred my older brother, I have repaid their kindness for giving me life. In this lifetime, I only want to live for myself once, for my true parents, Zhao Xizha and Li Shuha, to nurture me and teach me self-respect and self-love, for that couple who made me Zhao Qi, to live once. I don't need to return to my ancestral roots. I also don't owe the Qin family anything anymore. Moreover, fate takes its twists and turns. Sun Jiaqing was the light that saved me in my previous life. In this life, he is still behind me, holding an umbrella for me, standing up for me. Who said this isn't fate? Chen Ziyuan never came to find me again. When Sun Jiaqing heard about my transfer order, he immediately applied for one in a hurry. After finishing work at the Beijing pilot unit, he still showed up as usual at the downstairs of my house, with one hand in his pocket, with a string of sugar-coated haws in his mouth. As if nothing had happened, he waited for me. Seeing me, he smiled and draped his coat over me, his tone casual. "Beijing isn't like Guangdong, it's cooling down today. Don't push yourself." I couldn't help but glance at him. "You're not going to ask what I said to Chen Ziyuan?" He bit into a candied hawthorn and said slowly, "Why ask? He's not someone I care about." I was taken aback. He turned his head to look at me, his gaze growing more serious. "I've said it before, no matter what you've been through, who owes you, who betrayed you, it doesn't matter at all. Anyway, Big Brother will always protect you." The wind was cold, but his palm was warm. In that moment, I suddenly felt even if I could relive this life 100 times, I would still walk to his side. "Sun Jiaqing," I called him softly. "Ha." He looked at me. I looked into his eyes, always filled with mirth, and said seriously, "Don't change." He smiled, he grinned, revealing his two little fangs, just as mischievous as ever, yet it brings a sense of comfort. "How could I dare to change? If I did, wouldn't you beat me to death?" Qin Ziyun went completely insane in prison, suffering a mental breakdown. Chen Ziyuan also fell ill night after night. I dreamed of my childhood when he abandoned me, leaving me unable to survive, torn to death by hyenas. He never married in his lifetime, serving his parents until their old age. In the end, he renounced the world and left the Chen family's savings and property to me. Apart from the house, I donated everything. When my first child with Sun Jiaqing was born, he sent a long letter to Chu Yi. "Reading your words feels like seeing you in person. I heard that you had a safe delivery and both mother and child are well. It feels as though a heavy burden has finally been lifted from my heart. I shouldn't have disturbed you, but since I picked up the pen, every word has been stuck in my throat, and I can't help but speak my mind. In this lifetime, I lost you twice. Once, when you gave your all just to save my life. I saw you as a sinner. Once, when I was young, I personally carried you out of the hospital. I thought I was protecting family bonds. Little did I know, I was pushing my dearest into the abyss with my own hands. Countless times in my dreams, I returned to that rainy night, at that alley corner. You curled up and wept, hyenas surround you, yet I turn and walk away. I have prayed to Buddha countless times, hoping only that when I wake from this dream, you will still call me brother, but I know, that is already a distant hope. After my parents passed away, I have been guarding the ancestral hall, not daring to slack off for a single day, burning incense, offering prayers, reciting scriptures, for you, for them, and for my past life, which I had no time to look back on. If there is an afterlife, I would rather be a green pine tree at your door, guarding you through all 4 seasons, unharmed, no longer seeking any brother-sister bond, only wishing for you, a lifetime of peace, a life without regret. Twice in this life, I have been blinded by dust, both in heart and sight. Now, I have shaved my head and become a monk. With the dim lamp and ancient Buddha as my constant companions, there is no need for you to come see me, and I dare not see you again. I have saved some money, originally intended for your child's education fund. If you refuse to accept it, please donate it for charity. Consider it my final repayment for past karma. Peeling, allow me to call your name one last time. In this lifetime, I am grateful that you are still alive. The most regretful thing is that I couldn't protect you. May you, in this life, have flowers in spring, wind in summer, fruit in autumn, and snow in winter, with Joy and peace, and all your wishes fulfilled to you on. I bow my head. In the letter, there is a stack of money saved over the years. I told Jiaqing, I don't know who sent this money, so let's donate it all. He understood the words in my eyes, held my hand, and said, okay, in this lifetime, I will not look back again, and finally, I can live for myself. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. The year our family was at its poorest, my mother had my sister and me draw lots. The short stick meant dropping out to participate in a talent show, while the long stick meant continuing to study and take the college entrance exam. In my previous life, both my mother and sister came to me and gave me the opportunity to continue my studies. My sister voluntarily gave up her chance to study and signed with an entertainment company to participate in the talent show, and with her increasingly stunning looks and the persona of a foodie who never gains weight, she successfully broke into the spotlight. But at the same time, I became uglier and fatter in just 2 short months. On the night of her debut, she played the victim in front of the cameras, claiming that I bullied her relentlessly by taking advantage of our mother's favoritism. As a result, I was cyberbullied to death by her fans. And it wasn't until my final moments that I realized the so-called favoritism was nothing but an illusion. The two of them had long planned to bind a transfer system to me. I would transfer my beauty to her, while she would transfer all her excess weight to me. When I opened my eyes again, I saw my sister in the live broadcast room, proudly flaunting her beauty. Without hesitation, I stood up and smeared 10 times concentrated chili water all over my face. The next second, a piercing scream immediately echoed from the phone. A piercing, distorted scream suddenly erupted from the phone. The phone on the table was currently displaying a live stream on the screen. Julia, who had just applied the skincare product to her face and was praising it to the audience with a smile, now had her originally fair face visibly swollen and red. My face hurts so much, it's so hot, help, water, get me water quickly. She suddenly covered her face, wailing in agony in front of the camera, her body contorting as she collapsed onto the chair, tears and mucus streaming down her face. Looking utterly disheveled, the live stream descended into chaos, with the comments that had been praising her stunning beauty instantly flooding the screen with question marks. It wasn't until the original live stream was interrupted and the screen went completely black that I finally stood up and went into the bathroom to wash off the spicy sauce that covered my face. As I wiped the water droplets from my face, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. There was no redness or swelling at all, and my eyes darkened. My guess was right after all. This transfer system is indeed mutual. In my previous life, my mother had my sister and me draw lots. The short stick meant dropping out of school to participate in a talent show, while the long stick meant continuing our studies and taking the college entrance exam. My mother and sister approached me at the same time, giving me the opportunity to continue my studies. My sister, on the other hand, voluntarily entered the entertainment industry to participate in a talent show. With her increasingly stunning looks and her foodie who never gains weight persona, she successfully stood out. Meanwhile, in just 2 short months, I grew uglier and fatter. On the night of my sister's debut, she played the victim in front of the camera, claiming that she grew up in a biased family and that I schemed to steal her chance to study, forcing her to reluctantly join the talent show. Unexpectedly, she ended up debuting. She once again gained a great deal of sympathy and the heartache of netizens by playing the victim, earning the title Daughter of Fate. However, I was exposed by her fans and ultimately died from cyberbullying. It wasn't until just before my death that I realized my mother's so-called favoritism toward me was nothing but an illusion. My mother had long known about my sister's transfer system and even helped her scheme against me. I transferred my beauty to her, and she transferred all her excess fat to me. Not long after, my mom called, telling me to come downstairs immediately to go to the hospital with her. In the hospital, Julia was lying on the bed, her entire body trembling uncontrollably. Her once proud face was now so swollen that it was completely unrecognizable. Like an over-fermented red dough, dense red rashes covered every inch of her skin, with some areas even scratched raw, oozing tiny traces of blood and yellowish fluid. Julia, what on earth happened? Why didn't you mention that? You have sensitive skin. Do you have any idea how much of an uproar this has caused online? Even though we shut down the live stream as quickly as possible, some fans still uploaded the video from that session. Now everyone is saying that the Essence water contains highly allergenic ingredients. The brand's phone lines are flooded with calls demanding compensation from the production team. Do you realize how much damage you've caused to the show? In front of Julia's bed, it should be her agent, who is currently yelling and complaining at her. Julia, on the other hand, remained Silent, her head lowered like a frightened quail, watching Julia being bullied, my mother's eyes immediately turned red, and she rushed forward without hesitation, pushing the person away at once. Enough, what are you yelling about? It was the skincare product itself that had the problem. I haven't even sued them for ruining my daughter's face like this. What right do they have to blame her instead? You promised to make my daughter a superstar back then, and now something like this has happened. As her agent, instead of focusing on her, you're here blaming her. If I had known it would turn out like this, I never should have entrusted her to you. The agent stumbled back from the push, looking at the furious mother and then at Julia, who was in a terrible state on the bed. He was so angry that his lips trembled. In the end, he left them with a harsh remark to figure things out on their own before slamming the door and storming off. Watching the agent leave, the room fell into silence once again. Looking at Julia's face, swollen like a pig's head, I had to pinch my thigh hard to barely stop myself from laughing out loud, and just then, Julia suddenly raised her eyes. Her gaze, like a poisoned dagger, shot straight at me, filled with deep-seated resentment and furious rage. Lena, she forced my name out from her throat, her voice hoarse and distorted. What have you done to your face, you fool? Why has my face become like this? Listening to her almost reckless questioning at this moment, I sneered inwardly, but on the surface, I instantly welled up with extreme grievance and innocence. My eyes looked at her with confusion and fear, my voice trembling with tears. Sister, what are you talking about? What does your face turning out like this have to do with me? Julia, seeing that her sister was still intent on losing her temper, their mother immediately scolded her sternly, deliberately putting on a stern face and forcibly restraining her. What are you yelling at your sister for here? Your sister isn't even around. How could she possibly have done this to your face? You must have been careless and used something you shouldn't have, which caused an allergic reaction. You did this to yourself, and you still have the nerve to blame your sister. My mother snorted coldly at Julia, her tone of defending me almost identical to the way she seemed to protect me in my past life, and it was precisely because of this that I foolishly believed in my past life that my mother was truly biased in my favor. Seeing that my emotions had stabilized, my mom looked at me again, her seemingly gentle tone carrying a hint of probing. Lena, your sister was probably just concerned about you. Why don't you think carefully? Did you get something on your face? Hearing her clumsy excuse, I deliberately pretended not to notice anything and lowered my head, trying hard to recall. As if suddenly remembering something, I looked up at the two of them, my tone tinged with a hint of guilt. It seems like during lunch, I accidentally got a bit of that extra spicy chili sauce you bought yesterday, Mom, on my face, but I washed it off right away. It's nothing serious. Chili sauce. Almost the moment she heard my words, Julia on the hospital bed instantly flew into a rage, her already swollen face twisting into an even more hideous expression. Lena, you fool. You lunatic. You actually got chili sauce on your face. Enough, Julia, Mom cut her off abruptly, her face asmith and her chest heaving violently. Clearly struggling to suppress some overwhelming emotion, she took a deep breath, looked at me, and tried to keep her voice steady, though it still trembled. Lena, you don't need to be here anymore. Go back and do your homework. I need to talk to your sister alone. With tears in my eyes, I gave the two of them a deliberately pitiful look. After responding with a low "oh," I turned and walked out of the ward, thoughtfully closing the door gently behind me. The moment the door closed, the timidity and innocence on my face vanished without a trace, replaced only by icy mockery. I didn't leave but instead quietly hid by the door, eavesdropping on the sounds inside the ward. The oppressive silence in the ward lasted only a few seconds before it was shattered by Julia's hysterical, tearful roar. Mom, why didn't you keep an eye on that idiot? I worked so hard to get this live streaming opportunity. It was all to gain popularity and build up the hype, but now, I haven't gained any popularity, and my reputation is ruined. I made such a fool of myself in front of the camera. I've offended the brand and the production team. You saw how my agent just tried to shift the blame. All the losses from now on will definitely fall on me. How am I supposed to pay the penalty fees? What about my future? All my hard work has been ruined by that idiot. Julia's sobbing immediately tugged at my mom's heartstrings. Soon, I only heard my mother comforting her repeatedly. All right, Julia, your sister probably hasn't gone far yet. Keep your crying down. I know you're upset, but what's the use of scolding her now? The matter of binding the system is a secret. Do you realize you almost gave it away just now? That system made it clear from the start. If the other party who bears the harm finds out about the system's existence, the one who suffers the harm will immediately switch. The most Important thing right now is to get your face treated as soon as possible. Mom promises. Tomorrow, I'll take Lena to the best cosmetic hospital for the most expensive skin repair and the best nutrient injections. As long as your face can still be fixed, you still have a chance to turn things around. What happened today might not be all bad. At least it could stir up some sympathy from netizens. As long as you still have attention, the talent agency will definitely not give up on you. Listening to my mom repeatedly making these promises to Julia, a cold, knowing smile couldn't help but appear on my face. If the party on the receiving end of the harm becomes aware of the system's existence, the target of the harm will immediately reverse. So that's how it is. So now, the beneficiary has become me, and the system on Julia will no longer work. Before I could rejoice for long, a heated argument at the end of the hallway caught my attention. A middle-aged woman in a hospital gown, stout and burly, was yelling at a nurse, gesticulating wildly and emotionally shoving the nurse who was trying to stop her, clearly a typical scene of medical dispute. Some patients and family members were gathered at a distance, pointing and whispering, but no one dared to step forward, and I watched that woman who was acting like a madwoman, flailing her arms. Then I touched my own intact, only slightly reddened cheek, and almost instantly, a wild and bold idea began to swirl in my mind. Want to restore your face to its original state? It won't be that easy, Julia. My gaze was fixed tightly on that emotionally out-of-control woman, who was on the verge of an outburst, and my eyes suddenly shone with an astonishing intensity. I took a deep breath and, in an instant, strode purposefully toward the center of the chaos, righteously stepping in front of the nurse and successfully making myself the target. If you don't have money, get out and don't come here for treatment. The hospital worked hard to cure you, and now you're biting the hand that feeds you. If you're broke, go beg on the streets with a broken bowl. Don't embarrass yourself here by demanding money from the hospital. Hearing these extremely harsh words, the woman causing the commotion was almost instantly stunned. Immediately after, as she processed the words, she flew into a rage almost at once, and the focus of the conflict shifted instantly as she roared at me. Where did this little bitch come from who dares to curse at me? I'm cursing at shameless people like you. I was not afraid at all and continued to provoke her, saying whatever was the most offensive. Sure enough, it didn't take many words to completely enrage her, and she raised her hand and slapped me hard across the face. You little bitch, how dare you curse at me? I'll beat you to death, the woman roared, slapping me across the face again and again. The slaps did indeed land on my face, but I felt no pain at all. It was as if someone had merely caressed me. Where the pain had gone, there was no need to wonder. I only know that the more I get beaten, the more excited I become, even feeling it's not enough. I reach out and grab the other person's hair, turning the one-sided beating into a mutual brawl. Come on, if you dare to cause trouble, is this all you've got? If you have the guts, just kill me. The woman, provoked by me, almost completely lost her sanity. With reddened eyes and a ferocious expression, she grabbed my hair tightly with one hand while slapping my face hard with the other. After a few slaps, she choked my throat, pinned me to the ground, and started punching and kicking me. The onlookers were almost dumbfounded and quickly stepped forward, trying to pull the two of us apart, and just a second after they separated us, my mother rushed out of the hospital room with a panicked expression, screaming desperately at the nurse, "Someone, come quickly, help, my daughter has passed out," unable to explain the sudden appearance of the bruises on her face and body. The hospital initially suspected that my mother had been abusing Julia in the room, accused her of domestic violence, and nearly called the police to arrest her. And after finding out that I had been beaten in a dispute with someone outside the ward, to avoid exposing the truth, my mother, though furious, still pretended to care about me, using the excuse that it's ugly for a girl to have scars on her face. She took me to various high-end beauty salons and spent a fortune on restorative treatments for me. It must be said that the money was indeed well spent. A week later, almost no traces of the injury could be seen on my face. Although Julia's face had improved somewhat, it was still red and swollen. During this week, the online public opinion about Julia's livestream continued to escalate. The skincare product she endorsed in her livestream already had issues. In the previous life, it was exposed as problematic after Julia debuted. Now, with the livestream incident involving Julia, it immediately triggered multiple reports, leading the relevant authorities to quickly uncover that the brand's skincare products contained falsified ingredients, including many allergens. It was a twist of fate that the scandal broke earlier than expected. After the official announcement was released, the online abuse directed at Julia almost instantly reversed, overwhelming sympathy and affection for her poured in like scalding oil, splattering and raising a dense layer of blisters on my heart. It must be said that Julia's agency is indeed skilled. Seizing this opportunity, they managed to shape her into a motivational idol who is resilient and persevering, performing despite her injuries, and Julia's still swollen and red face became her best medal for gaining attention. She was no longer in a hurry to recover, but instead frequently appeared in front of the camera with that pitiful state, each appearance accompanied by trending searches and soaring discussions. Her popularity even surpassed what it had been in her previous life at one point, even exceeding that of the currently highly anticipated first-place winner. Watching Julia on a talk show in my phone, tearfully talking about how she overcame the psychological pressure brought by the accidental allergy and all that empty talk about persevering with her dreams, I expressionlessly closed the video. Julia, go ahead and act. Just give it your best performance. I narrowed my eyes and whispered to the cold screen. The final stage is set for you. This time, I will make you fall from the true peak. Shattered to pieces, never to rise again, Julia, riding the wave of popularity, successfully advanced through each round and made it to the final debut battle. To maintain this unexpectedly gained attention, she discussed with her mother about stopping my skincare treatments, clearly intending to preserve this pitiful state until the very last moment. After all, it was rumored that her talent agency had already negotiated with the show's producers, securing her debut spot in advance. All that remained was this performance while injured, which would allow her to be propelled into the spotlight as the most talked about contestant of the talent show, thanks to an inspiring narrative topic. My dear sister, since she wants a topic, how could I, as her dearest sister, not help her fulfill her final wish? Of course, I will give her a grand one. At this performance she has been looking forward to the most, allowing her to become a god in one fell swoop. Let all the audience never forget her highlight moment for the rest of their lives. The day of the performance quickly arrived. Mom specifically called the agent to get 2 tickets, not wanting to miss her precious daughter's shining moment. It is said that for this final, the show's production team specially contacted several of the hottest video platforms and live streaming apps to broadcast the entire performance live. The venue was almost packed with a sea of people, with light signs flashing and fans' screams nearly lifting the roof on the leaderboards of various social media apps on mobile phones. The popularity of this live broadcast is being updated in real time. The leaderboards and voting channels for the debut contestants have already opened, and Julia's name remains high on the list, even claiming the top spot at one point. The front rows are almost entirely occupied by the talent agencies behind the contestants, as well as their friends and family. Soon, with the host's enthusiastic opening, the debut battle that will determine whether the contestants can successfully debut officially begins. Unlike the previous team performances, the final is an individual battle for each contestant. As the contestants made their appearances one after another, each entrance triggered a thunderous roar. As the queen of topics, Julia was naturally scheduled to appear in the middle to late part of the lineup, serving as the grand finale. When the host called out her name in an excited voice, the roar in the entire venue almost reached its peak. Countless support signs bearing her name were waved frantically in the audience. As the lights dimmed, Julia made her entrance. She was clearly dressed with great care, wearing a silver miniskirt studded with rhinestones that sparkled under the spotlight. She tried hard to project the aura of a queen, but her face, still marked with obvious red marks, looked particularly comical under the harsh lights and the close-up shots on the high-definition screen. Even so, it still drew screams of excitement from her fans in the audience. Julia, goddess, my daughter is so beautiful today. Julia, fly bravely, we'll always be with you. The screams of the fans were almost deafening. My mother was so excited she was almost in tears, and at that moment, she didn't even pay attention to me. With a face full of pride, she took out her phone and started taking pictures of Julia on stage. I, too, smiled and cheered loudly for Julia, but then I took out my thermos and took a few big gulps of the bitter-tasting water inside. This is something special I went out of my way to get, just to give Julia a boost. It's all about fast results and powerful impact. On stage, the prelude of the music had already begun. Julia took a deep breath and assumed her opening pose. The spotlight was now focused on her. Under the gaze of the crowd, she began to dance to the music. At first, everything seemed perfect. Julia performed steadily, and every move she made successfully drew screams from the fans on site. A slight disturbance began to stir in my stomach, and I knew the medicine was taking effect. The next moment, Julia, who had been confidently swaying on stage, suddenly paused her movements. Her expression then began to look unnatural. Her dance steps continued, but it was clear she had noticed something unusual about her body. She was struggling to maintain her expression and movements, though a certain leg lift and spin was noticeably smaller in range and somewhat stiff, as the effects of the medication set in more quickly. Julia's complexion began to worsen. After all, this was not something she could simply endure through sheer willpower. That unbearable, overwhelming force caused fine beads of sweat to form on her forehead, becoming especially noticeable as the camera zoomed in. The music gradually faded to its conclusion, and for the final move, she needed to execute a stylish cartwheel. This move was something she had been marketing for a full half-month, working hard for half a month, making it a highly anticipated action among her many fans, and now, this very move will become the step that sends her tumbling into the abyss. Under the camera's close-up, she barely managed to stand still, her face flushed red from holding back, now filled with sheer terror. Almost everyone could see that her body was trembling uncontrollably, her legs clenched tightly, her body slightly hunched, as if she was desperately enduring some immense pain. Some audience members below had already noticed something amiss, their voices of concern mixed with doubt constantly reaching Julia's ears. Finally, as if she had nothing left to lose, she gritted her teeth, her eyes fierce, and leaped forward. I think she must have been betting that she could hold back. However, it turned out that some things cannot be endured through willpower alone. The moment she leaped into the air, all that could be heard was a loud splash. The next second, a stream of thick, golden liquid shot out from between Julia's legs, almost gushing down. Finally unable to hold back her release, Julia's tense expression broke, and she collapsed onto the stage in utter disarray. Time seemed to freeze at that very moment. The once thunderous screams and cheers on stage were as if a mute button had been pressed. Countless pairs of eyes were now fixed in unison on the figure lying collapsed at the center of the stage. Julia, as if under a spell of paralysis, stared blankly at the scene before her. When she finally came to her senses and realized what was happening, she wanted to stop, but found herself unable to do so. It was as if a floodgate had opened within her, and she began to spew uncontrollably on stage, at a speed almost visible to the naked eye. A large patch of dark yellow rapidly spread across the stage centered around her, an indescribable odor and liquid, like an out-of-control faucet, gushed out from between her tightly clenched legs with tremendous force, spraying out in a radial pattern. The audience in the front rows were almost immediately affected, covering their mouths and noses as they retched uncontrollably. Amid the sounds of retching, the venue erupted into an uproar almost instantly, loud enough to lift the roof. Holy shit, she pooped on stage. Ugh, so disgusting, I'm going to throw up. Refund, ugh, give me a refund. Screams, angry curses, retching sounds, all kinds of noises mixed together, creating a scene of chaos that was almost indescribable. The live broadcast signal was frantically cut off amid the panicked shouts of the staff, but it all seemed to be too late. My mother, standing by, stared wide-eyed and pale at the scene before her, unable to snap out of it for a long time. Some fans who had always supported Julia couldn't bear the shock of what they were seeing and, almost going mad, threw the things in their hands onto the stage. As for me, I seized the moment and, holding my breath against the foul stench, rushed toward the stage, shouting to the crowd as I went, "Don't look, none of you are allowed to look." While shouting, she didn't forget to cry out to Julia, "Sis, stop pulling, run, isn't this embarrassing enough?" Hearing my words, Julia seemed to be completely overwhelmed by the immense humiliation and her loss of physical control, and just at that moment, a piece of fan support thrown from somewhere in the audience hit her squarely on the head. She let out a sharp cry, her head tilted to the side, and she fainted directly into the filth she had created. The venue was in chaos, and the organizers urgently announced the suspension of the performance. However, the speed at which this incident spread online was faster than the plague. Although the production team used all their resources to desperately block the video's dissemination, the hundreds of audience members present during the live broadcast had already recorded this epic live accident and, after blurring it, spread it online. In just a few short hours, the eye-stinging video spread like a virus, wildly appearing on major social media platforms and forcefully reclaiming the top spot on the trending charts. It even dominated the top 10 trending topics. Hashtag Julia's debut stage erupts in public. Hashtag shocking, the most explosive moment in talent show history. Hashtag Splatoon Julia, shit's about to hit the fan. Hashtag holy shit, is this for real? Not special effects, HD uncensored video on sale for just $1. Super pungent, watch with caution. No, what did her teammates do to suffer such an undeserved misfortune? Because of this, her debut match is now suspended, and all the hard work everyone put in during this time has gone to waste. Has this girl completely let herself go? I always thought she was deliberately not treating her face to stay in the spotlight, but now it seems she doesn't even care about her face anymore. The once highly anticipated show has now become a laughingstock in the industry, being abruptly suspended and even pulled from major platforms. As a result, the sister has been blacklisted in the industry. Her agency is so furious that they planned to freeze her out and demand she pay a huge penalty for breach of contract. The contestants whose debuts were ruined by her have taken to the internet to vent, stirring up their fans and almost tearing her apart with criticism. Some people even blocked the entrance to her hospital room, hurling all kinds of insults at her, nearly driving her to a mental breakdown. Everything I suffered in my past life has now been repaid to her 100-fold. I can only say that my mother truly loves Julia deeply. Even in this situation, she still refuses to give up and wants to help her make a comeback. So at the peak of the incident's popularity, Julia used my mom's account to start a live stream. In the live stream, she looked pale, having lost a significant amount of weight almost overnight, and appeared extremely haggard on camera. She and my mom worked together, crying as they shifted all the blame onto me. They portrayed me, her younger sister, as a jealous and malicious woman who envied her sister's beauty. The reason Julia made a fool of herself on stage was because she drank the water I had laced with laxatives before her performance. It was out of jealousy that I deliberately tried to ruin her, so I could take her place. But how could I possibly let the two of them steer public opinion toward me, just like in the previous life, having been keeping a close watch on the two of them? I almost immediately after their live-streamed clarification, grabbed a large bottle of wine, pinched my nose, and chugged it down. Not long after, Julia seemed as if she were drunk, her entire face flushed red. In front of the camera, her eyes were dazed, and she sprawled out, even vomiting with a wah sound in front of the lens once again. Then, she began to lose control and started speaking the truth while drunk to the camera. Lena is such an idiot. We were born to the same mother, so why is she prettier than me, and smarter too? Since I can't get better, she shouldn't either. Mom, I'll tell you a secret. I have a transfer system. Haha. What if I slap myself? Will Lena feel double the pain? Haha. After saying this, Julia began slapping herself in front of the camera. After a few slaps, her face instantly swelled up, but it was as if she couldn't feel the pain at all. In fact, she grew more and more excited, her expression becoming increasingly twisted, as if she had gone completely mad. No matter how my mother tried to stop me in horror, I refused to relent. The barrage of comments on the screen grew thicker and thicker, and the expected sympathetic messages were instantly drowned out by insults. The platform immediately banned the live stream on the grounds of not supporting self-harm behavior. Julia's insane words and frenzied actions once again became the laughingstock of everyone. Even my mother, who is usually slow to catch on, could sense that something was wrong at this moment. When she rushed home in a hurry, what she saw was the living room floor covered with empty bottles and me sitting calmly on the sofa. Seeing this scene, she understood everything almost instantly and flew into a rage, shouting at me, "Lena, what have you done?" Facing her fury, I just chuckled softly and shrugged, saying, "Just as you see, Mom, the wine might not taste great, but I think my sister isn't feeling too well right now." How did you know? The eyes that were burning with anger just moments ago were now filled with immense fear. She staggered backward as if struck by an invisible, massive hammer. A deathly silence filled the living room, broken only by her heavy, fearful gasps. Surprised, I stood up and slowly walked over to her, looking down at her from above, surprised that I know about the system, that this body of mine is both Julia's nutrient bank and her trash can. As I finished speaking, my mother's body trembled violently. She kept repeating questions about how I knew, and when I found out, I let out a scornful laugh and began telling her about the nightmare from my past life. I had a very, very long dream. In the dream, you and my sister did the same thing, gently let me draw the long stick, letting me go to school. You seemed to favor me, taking me to all sorts of beauty treatments, but my skin only got worse, while my sister grew more and more beautiful, becoming a star that everyone admired, and I grew uglier and fatter, like a piece of rotting, stinking trash. I paused, my tone eerily calm, and by the time I finished the last word, my mother had almost completely collapsed to the floor, her expression growing more and more horrified as she looked at me. "No, that's not true, Lena, let me explain, please." She shook her head violently, trying to grab my hand, but I coldly pushed it away. "Explain," I sneered, my gaze sharp as a knife. "Explain why, as your daughter, you could be so biased as to use my flesh, my life, to pave a splendid future for Julia. Why could you just stand by and watch as the system drained me bit by bit, as she pushed me into hell, and then even step on my corpse to squeeze out the last bit of use, just to play the victim and gain sympathy?" My accusation struck her like a heavy hammer, pounding relentlessly on her already fragile nerves. She broke down, covering her face as tears streamed through her fingers, no longer out of anger, but from the despair of having her facade completely torn away, and a hint of indescribable regret. She sobbed uncontrollably, her shoulders shaking violently. "Lena, you are more beautiful than your sister. and smarter than her. Even if you rely on yourself, you can live a good life in the future. But Julia can't. She has never been as good as you since she was a child, slow-witted and soft-hearted. If I don't plan for her, her life will be ruined. She is my flesh and blood. I can't just stand by and watch her. So, you chose to ruin me to save her. I finished that brutally harsh sentence for her, my voice laced with ice. By destroying one daughter to fulfill another. Mom, your maternal love is so selfish it's nauseating. She suddenly lifted her head, tears and mucus streaming down her face, a final flicker of desperate hope gleaming in her eyes. Lena, Mom was wrong. Mom really knows she was wrong. For the sake of blood ties, for the sake of giving birth to you and raising you, please help your sister online. Go and clarify. Say that you were the one who put the laxative. Say you were jealous of her. As long as you take the blame, Julia can still be saved. She can still turn things around. Mom is begging you. Mom is kneeling to you, she said, and with a thud, she really knelt at my feet, clutching my legs tightly with both hands, as if grasping her last lifeline. Pleading humbly, I looked down at this woman who once controlled my fate but now lay as low as dust. The weakness from being drained in my past life and the suffocation from being cyberbullied erupted in that moment, burning away the last trace of what was called family affection. One by one, I pried open her tightly clenched fingers. The force was not great, but it carried an unyielding resolve. Impossible. My voice was terrifyingly calm in her desperate gaze. I turned around and walked step by step toward the living room window, my back to her, my hand gently touching the cold glass pane. Mom, I'm giving you two final choices. My voice was soft, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. First, have Julia admitted to a psychiatric hospital before dawn. Make it the strictest kind, to ensure she never gets the chance to cause trouble again in this lifetime. Second, I'm going to jump from here right now. Since we're going to die, let's all die together. As I spoke, I had already opened the window, placed one foot on the windowsill, and leaned half my body out, laughing menacingly. Even if I fall and turn into a mess, at most, I'll only suffer for a moment before finding relief. But my sister, she's different. I deliberately paused, satisfied to see the fear instantly magnified in her eyes. The system is still here, isn't it? All the pain I endure, if I wish, can be returned to her twofold. No, my mother completely broke down. She collapsed to the ground as if all her bones had been pulled out, clutching my legs tightly, sobbing uncontrollably and incoherently. Don't, I'll send Julia away, to a mental hospital. I'll make the call right now. Lena, come down now. Her hands trembling, she almost crawled to reach the phone that had been dropped on the floor. Her fingers shook uncontrollably as she dialed, and she screamed incoherently into the phone, making frantic arrangements. I retracted my foot and closed the window. The night wind was shut out, leaving only her suppressed, desperate sobs in the living room. From that day on, Julia disappeared. She was sent to a private psychiatric hospital in the distant suburbs, known for its strict management and harsh methods, and I became a regular at that psychiatric hospital. Every time I step into that corridor filled with the smell of disinfectant and despair, listening to the faint screams and cries, my mood remains unusually calm. I would sit on the cold chair in the visiting room, separated by thick bulletproof glass, looking at Julia on the other side. She no longer looked as glamorous as she once did on stage. Her eyes were dull and empty, the once proud face, swollen and distorted by the effects of medication, with dry and disheveled hair, dressed in a loose hospital gown, resembled a body from which the soul had been drained. Only when I appeared would a sudden burst of bitter resentment and deep-seated fear erupt from the hollow depths of her eyes. I did not speak, only watched her quietly. Then, at an angle unseen by the caregiver, hidden by the visiting table, I slowly raised my hand. Sometimes, it's a thin needle, piercing deeply into the tip of one's own finger. Sometimes, it's a small, sharp blade hidden under a fingernail, slicing a shallow cut on the inner wrist. Sometimes, it's twisting the most tender skin on the inner thigh with force until it turns black and blue. Each act of self-harm is accompanied by Julia's sudden, piercing scream from behind the glass, a sound so shrill it hardly seems human. Demon, Lena, you demon, kill me, just kill me, she screamed while frantically banging her head against the ground and the wall, producing dull thuds. Blood streamed down her forehead, mixing with snot and tears, smearing her twisted, distorted face. The caregiver rushed in, roughly restrained her, and administered a sedative. I, on the other hand, watched expressionlessly as the venom in her eyes was gradually devoured by boundless pain and despair, as she, like a true trapped beast, slowly weakened under the effects of the drug, eventually becoming dazed and remorseful. Sis, enjoy it to the fullest. Before she completely lost consciousness, I silently mouthed the words to her. After Julia was sent to the mental hospital. My mother visibly aged rapidly. She seemed to have lost her backbone, wandering around all day in a daze with hollow eyes. She didn't dare to look at me, and when our eyes occasionally met, she would quickly avert her gaze as if burned, leaving behind an unmistakable, bone-deep fear. She tried to please me, cooking my favorite dishes, buying expensive clothes, and speaking to me cautiously. Like a humble servant, I accepted it all but never responded. The atmosphere at home was suffocatingly oppressive until one day, Julia, unable to endure the torment any longer, committed suicide in the psychiatric hospital. My mother, who had suffered repeated blows and was already overwhelmed by regret and pain, went completely insane. The system vanished completely the moment Julia died, and I was the one who sent my mother to the same mental hospital where Julia had once stayed. The moment I stepped out of the mental hospital, the iron gate slammed shut behind me with a heavy clang. The sunlight was a bit harsh, so I squinted slightly and raised my hand to shield my eyes. There was no invisible shackle, no transferred pain, no close relative to be wary of. All the pain and torment suffered in the previous life seemed to vanish without a trace at this moment. I finally stood under the sunlight once again, taking big strides forward. The world felt unprecedentedly clear and peaceful. After hearing the second story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I was set up by my sister and forced to marry Simon while she, stepping on my reputation, married my fiancé in a grand and glorious manner. 3 years into the marriage, Simon treated me like a thorn in his side. Cold violence and humiliation never ceased. It wasn't until my sister died in a car accident that he finally softened his attitude toward me, offering me an empty shell of a marriage where we merely treated each other with superficial respect. But before I could even catch my breath, the Miller family went bankrupt overnight, and I was hit by a truck on my way home. Just before dying, I clearly saw the familiar face in the driver's seat. "It's my good husband." Why? I was filled with despair, but he laughed coldly. "It's all your fault. I should have been with your sister." A sharp pain struck me, and I died with my eyes wide open. And once again, I opened my eyes and found myself back on the day I was designed. I jolted awake, my body still aching with the excruciating pain of being hit by a car. My nerves felt as if they were being pierced by countless fine needles, each prick sending a shiver through me. Before I could even recover from the lingering sensation of death, a burning heat suddenly flared up in my lower abdomen. I gritted my teeth, digging my nails into my thigh, using the sharp pain to barely steady my swaying body. Staggering to the door, I pushed it open a crack and saw Lydia peering furtively around the corner of the hallway. The calculation and guilt in her eyes were exactly the same as in my past life. Hatred surged instantly, nearly overwhelming my reason. I clenched my fists, tiptoed around behind her, seized the moment, grabbed the decorative flower pot by the corridor, and smashed it down hard. Bang! The flower pot shattered with a crash, and Lydia grunted as she collapsed to the ground. I dragged her toward the room that had originally been prepared for me. After throwing her into the room, I snatched the blanket, covered her face tightly, and gritted my teeth as I spoke word by word. "Lydia, enjoy this return gift. In my previous life, at the engagement party, she drugged me and sent me into Simon's room. The next day, she and my fiancé brought our parents and a group of guests to catch me in the act. In bed, to save face, Simon had no choice but to marry me, while she got her wish and married my fiancé. In the 3rd year of marriage, Lydia died in a car accident. Not long after, the Miller family went bankrupt, and both parents passed away one after another, and I was hit and thrown by Simon himself while he was driving. Given a second chance at life, I will return every bit of the pain inflicted upon me, exactly as it was." The burning sensation in my body grew increasingly intense as I stumbled forward, groping my way along. Found it. I pushed open the door, which was not fully closed. "Miss Miller," a warm and surprised voice sounded, and I looked up, squinting to examine the man before me. Harry, the notorious playboy of J-City. He seemed to have just finished showering, with only a loosely wrapped towel around his waist. Water droplets slowly trickled from his jawline down to his collarbone. His 8-pack abs were faintly visible as he dried his hair, the curve of his waistline taut and alluring. When he raised an eyebrow to look at me, his eyelashes were damp, his Adam's apple bobbed slightly, and the warmth of his body mingled with the steam, making one's heart itch with desire. This kind of guy, who changes girlfriends every 3 to 5 days, is the perfect antidote. I casually pulled out a black card and tossed it in front of him, then hooked my arm around his neck and kissed him. "Spend the night with me." The notes are struck pell-mell, like pearls, large and small, falling on a plate of jade. When I woke up again, it was already 5 in the morning. The lingering, intimate atmosphere in the room unmistakably revealed what had happened the Night before, I ignored the soreness in my body and, taking advantage of the fact that the young master was still asleep, slipped away quietly. However, after I left, Harry on the bed slowly opened his eyes. By the time I lazily made my way back to my room, it was only just 6 o'clock. My parents booked the entire Heavenly Palace for 3 days for my engagement banquet. Little did they know that this would give an opportunity to those with ill intentions. I quickly took a shower in the bathroom to prepare for the upcoming drama. As I looked at the blue and purple marks on my originally fair skin, I couldn't help but recall the intensity of yesterday. Is Harry a dog or something? It's like he hasn't had a taste of meat in over a decade. Fortunately, he still had some restraint and didn't leave a single mark on my neck. After getting fully dressed, I slowly pushed the door open and leisurely headed to the first scene. Upstairs, the sounds of arguments and chaotic footsteps had already begun to echo, yet I remained unhurried, even politely greeting the familiar elders who had been awakened by the noise as I passed by. In my previous life, at this very moment, I had just woken up to their contemptuous gazes, not the benevolent looks they gave me now. The 5th and 6th floors are reserved for the guests' rooms, while my room happens to be on the 4th floor. When I appeared at the staircase right on time, I saw my fiancé pointing at the disheveled Simon and yelling, "Sarah is my fiancé. How dare you do something like this at my engagement party? Have you no shame?" I paused for a moment, a sarcastic smile curling at the corner of my mouth. In my previous life, my fiancé Jack had an early affair with my sister. Pitifully, I failed to see people clearly in that life, fell victim to schemes, and ended up being labeled as the villain by others, while they used it to gain sympathy and reap all the benefits. Everyone gathered at the door of the room, whispering, "This is truly disgraceful. I wonder what kind of upbringing could produce a child like this." Thank goodness it wasn't our family that formed a marriage alliance with the Millers. A smug expression flickered across Jack's face. The female lead of the engagement banquet was caught in bed with her lover. Imagine how explosive tomorrow's news will be. Through the wide open door, I saw the room in complete disarray. Simon sat on the edge of the bed with a grim expression, his upper body bare and only wearing a pair of shorts. His honey-toned skin was still marked with ambiguous red traces. On the bed, a woman whose face was hidden tightly clutched the blanket over her head, sobbing quietly. "Jack, what are you two arguing about?" I spoke up at the right moment, my face showing innocence and the daze of just waking up. Everyone turned to look, their expressions a mix of confusion, bewilderment, or stunned realization. If it's not the second Miss Miller in the bed, then who is it? I glanced at Jack, watching his expression shift from shock and confusion to panic. "Sarah, what are you doing here?" I blinked innocently and pointed at the woman on the bed. I was about to ask the same thing. How is my fiancé so sure that the woman on the bed is me? With that one sentence, it suddenly dawned on those who were still in the dark, and the crowd's gaze toward Jack became quite meaningful. "Enough." Mr. Miller, who had been silent all along, spoke with a grim expression, trying to put a stop to the farce. However, at that moment, a figure as swift as lightning suddenly darted through the crowd and, with lightning speed, accuracy, and force, yanked the blanket off the bed. Oh my, it's our high and mighty Miss Miller." Chu Yuran watched with composure as a panicked Lydia tried to pull the blanket back, speaking loudly. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone could clearly see the face of the person on the bed. "What?" Simon's expression stiffened for a moment. He turned his head and saw that it was indeed his unattainable white moonlight. He quickly grabbed the blanket and wrapped her up tightly. "This can't be." Jack turned his head and glared at me, the anger in his eyes almost tangible. "He suspects me." I let out a cold laugh and looked back at him defiantly. My eyes held a clear challenge. "I did it. So what?" I watched Jack's livid expression with great satisfaction, feeling nothing but delight. At this moment, Lydia on the bed also came to her senses. She pounded fiercely on Simon, who was shielding her, and pleaded with Mr. Miller in a tearful voice, "Dad, it must be that bitch Sarah." "Enough." Mr. Miller's furious shout instantly silenced the entire corridor. Mr. Miller rubbed his throbbing temples, trying to calm himself down. "I've made a fool of myself in front of everyone. Sarah, please see the elders off. Today's matter was my oversight as a host, and I will make it up to everyone another day." "Not at all, not at all." After hearing this, everyone had mixed feelings, but since the host had spoken, they couldn't very well stay any longer. Before leaving, Chu Yuran winked at me, smiling cheerfully. After I had seen off the guests one by one, only the main characters of this incident remained in the room. Dad, Lydia, still sobbing, was about to speak again. She pointed at me angrily. "It must be Sarah who harmed me. You have to stand up for me." Mr. Miller remained silent, and I just watched her performance quietly. Soon, there was a knock on the door from the secretary. "Chairman, the hotel surveillance system Happened to break down yesterday and is still under repair. Hearing this, Lydia looked terrified. Glancing at her father's expression, she immediately sensed that something was seriously wrong. Dad, let me explain, it's not what you think. Slap. However, before she could finish her words, she was abruptly slapped by Mr. Miller. Ungrateful daughter. Mr. Miller glared at her fiercely, his face a smith. Do you think I don't know what you've been up to? How dare you tarnish the Miller family's reputation like this? How dare you do this to me? So he knew all along. I lowered my gaze to hide the mockery in my eyes. Uncle Miller. Jack frowned, as if he wanted to step forward to stop him, but he abruptly halted his steps upon hearing Simon's voice. I will marry Lydia, Simon said firmly. I will treat Lydia well, so you can rest assured and entrust her to me. I will make sure not a single word of this matter gets out. In my previous life, after we were caught in bed, he pushed me away in disgust, leaving me disheveled in front of everyone, making me the laughingstock of the capital's social circle. I never expected that in this life, he would make such a promise to Lydia, but, my dear sister, she might not necessarily appreciate it. Sure enough, Lydia's hysterical scream echoed in everyone's ears the next moment. Who said I want to marry you? She slapped Jack hard across the face, her expression grim. You're just a worthless loser who's only good for eating and waiting to die. If you weren't of some use, who would even bother with you, Lydia? Simon clearly didn't expect that his idealized love had always thought of him this way. His eyes filled with disbelief. I stood by, coldly watching this dog-eat-dog drama unfold, never expecting Lydia to go crazy and charge at me to hit me. It's all your fault. You should be the one lying in this bed. I dodged to the side, coldly grabbing Lydia's wrist. Sister, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't just say whatever you want. This is illegal. Lydia's expression shifted repeatedly, but in the end, she just glared at me fiercely and weakly lowered her hand. It was you, wasn't it? As soon as we turned the corner, Jack grabbed my wrist, gritting his teeth. How could it be Lydia in his bed? It was clearly you who drank. As if realizing he had let something slip, he quickly stopped himself. I gently pulled my hand back, a smile curling at the corners of my lips, just like always, with just the right amount of confusion. Jack, what are you talking about? I never expected my sister would do something like this either, but how can you be so sure it was me? You're really acting strange today. Could it be that you were the one who did this? Jack suddenly stiffened and forced a laugh, saying, how could that be? Sarah, you've got it all wrong. I just thought your sister wouldn't do something like this. Then you think I would do something like this? I pouted, the smile on my face completely gone, as if I were about to burst into tears the next second. No, it's not. Seeing that I was about to cry, Jack quickly comforted me. I'm just worried, that's all. Be good. Listen to me. I'll take you back first. After you left, my expression instantly turned cold. Oh, Miss Miller, you sure changed your expression quickly. Who is it? I squinted, sizing up the newcomer. Standing at 185 centimeters, he looked even more imposing in his well-tailored suit, his slightly upturned peach blossom eyes, with their charmingly lifted corners, exuded a natural allure. Well, isn't this the poor sap Harry, whom I just slept with last night, Mr. Goo? I smiled innocently. I have no idea what you're talking about, little fox. Harry smirked playfully. Are you trying to deny it after what happened? I raised an eyebrow at him, neither confirming nor denying. I remember leaving a tip, Miss Miller. Were you dissatisfied with my service yesterday? I don't think I'm only worth this much. I blinked. I remembered there was at least $1 million in the card I gave him yesterday. Isn't that enough? Perhaps my furrowed brow and thoughtful expression amused him, so he casually handed me another card. This is my supplementary card, with no spending limit. He paused, seemingly worried that I might refuse, and added, one good turn deserves another. I nodded without declining and accepted the card, though its meaning was unclear. Why turn down free money, after all? Although Harry is a playboy, his net worth is easily 10 times mine. The eldest daughter of the Miller family married the young master of the Smith family. There was no grand wedding. The two simply registered their marriage in a hurry and hosted a few tables of close friends for a meal, and that was it. Mr. Miller's logic was clear. Since I got engaged first, I should be the one to marry first. To avoid complications, it was best for my sister and Simon to keep their wedding as simple as possible. To be honest, in this matter, I'm quite grateful to the old man. After all, he didn't force me and Jack to get married early just for the sake of so-called reputation. Otherwise, the next act would have been hard to perform. Early the next morning, I got up feeling refreshed, only to hear news about Lydia from the servants at home. I heard the young lady kicked the groom out late last night. Oh dear, the embarrassing scene she caused at the second young lady's engagement banquet has spread everywhere. How dare she still show her face? This Simon isn't a good person either. In my past life, These whispers and contemptuous looks were all directed at me. In this life, it's finally my sister and Simon's turn to experience it. Lucy, Bob, I greeted the two with a smile. Good morning. The two were startled, and after a moment of realization, they quickly responded, Good morning, second miss. Will second miss be going out today? I nodded and instructed Bob to prepare the car for me. The second young lady is truly wonderful, both beautiful in appearance and gentle in speech. What's important is that she knows how to read the room. I listened to the praises behind me and subtly curved my lips into a smile. In my past life, due to Simon's dislike for me, we never slept together. Simon's mother had always favored Lydia as her daughter-in-law and never liked me. After that incident, she made it a habit to impose family rules on me every now and then. After 3 years of marriage, because I hadn't given birth to a chubby grandson for him, she made me kneel for the entire night. Left with no choice, I tried to imitate my sister's style, wearing a little white dress and applying light makeup. Before pushing open the door to Simon's room unexpectedly, Simon's expression turned sour the moment he saw my outfit. He let out a scornful laugh and said, imitating B. I stubbornly wrapped my arms around his neck. Simon, but he pushed me away forcefully, and I crashed into the corner of the table with a thud. A faint crack sound came from my bones. Simon looked at me with disgust. Sarah, stop playing that sound effect. I won't be fooled by you again. So I was thrown right out the door by him, becoming the laughingstock of the entire Smith family. Almost every time I went out, I could hear people's undisguised scornful laughter. See that Mrs. Smith is the one who tried to climb into bed and got rejected. What Mrs. Smith? I heard she tried the same trick again to seduce her own husband and got thrown out. I think her status is even lower than a dog raised by the Smith family, followed by a torrent of mocking laughter, as if to completely drown me in an endless darkness. Miss Miller, Harry's soft call pulled me back to reality. He glanced at me with concern. If you're not feeling well, perhaps I should take you to the hospital for a checkup. I was taken aback for a moment, then slowly shook my head, still maintaining a perfectly gentle expression on my face. I'm fine, sorry to worry you. When he texted me last night saying he wanted to take me out to dinner, my first instinct was to refuse, but then I glanced at the card on my desk, hesitated for a moment, and eventually agreed. Sarah, Harry suddenly called out. I looked at him in confusion, not understanding why he suddenly called my name. If you're tired, you don't have to pretend. I froze, staring blankly into his serious eyes, which reflected a small version of me wearing a standard smile. I'm not, I instinctively wanted to argue back, but seeing his serious expression, I somehow couldn't bring myself to say anything. Harry looked at me quietly, returning to his usual charming demeanor, and said with a smile, after we finish eating, I'll take you somewhere. You're not going to sell me off, are you? I glanced at him suspiciously. He couldn't help but laugh. What are you talking about? Trafficking people is illegal, you know. Besides, I wouldn't have the heart to sell someone as beautiful as you. Stop being ridiculous, I said, rolling my eyes in exasperation. When we arrived at the place, I realized that what Harry was referring to was a spot where he and his rich friends usually went to race cars and have fun. As the car just rounded the last bend, the roar of the engine rushed in through the window with the wind. I leaned out to look and saw 7 or 8 modified race cars parked on the open ground halfway up the mountain. A few young men and women in racing suits were leaning against the cars, chatting and laughing. When they saw Harry's car, someone whistled. Oh, young Master Gu actually brought a pretty girl today. Harry ignored them, parked the car at the very end, and as he pulled me out, he handed me a black racing suit printed with a number. Put this on so you don't catch a cold from the wind later. The mountain wind was indeed chilly, carrying the fresh scent of grass and trees as it brushed against my face. I slipped on the racing suit, and surprisingly, it fit perfectly. While bending down to tie my shoelaces, I heard Harry greeting someone, same as usual. 3 laps, bring it on, who's afraid of you? A guy with dyed blonde hair patted the door of his car, but his eyes curiously glanced in my direction. Harry opened the car door for me and made a pleased gesture, his eyes gleaming with eager excitement. Hold on tight. The seatbelt was fastened tightly. As soon as I gripped the handle on the passenger side, the car shot forward like an arrow. Released from a bow, the track, carved into the mountain, was so narrow that only 2 cars could pass side by side. On one side was a steep cliff face, and on the other was a sharp slope overlooking farmland at the foot of the mountain. It scared me so much that my heart nearly leaped out of my chest. As we took the first sharp turn, the car nearly slid sideways, and I couldn't help but scream. But when I caught a glimpse of Harry's focused profile, I froze for a moment. His usual careless smile was gone, his brow slightly furrowed, and his knuckles were clearly defined as he gripped the steering wheel. His eyes were as bright as tempered fire, and his whole being radiated a reckless, wild energy. Wind rushed in through the open window, whipping my hair into a frenzy, while the roar of the engine and the screech of tires against the road filled my ears. On the second lap, the car behind was closing in. Harry suddenly jerked the steering wheel, and the car brushed past the mountain wall to overtake. I was so frightened that I screamed again, only to hear him chuckle softly. "Don't be afraid, I'm here." His voice mingled with the wind, yet it strangely put me at ease. When we crossed the finish line on the final lap, I was practically slumped in the seat, gasping for breath, my cheeks burning fiercely. Harry turned off the engine and looked at me, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Sarah, you were screaming louder than the mountain finches up here." I glared at him, but with little energy, only managing to let out a weak huff while clutching my pounding chest. He suddenly leaned over, unbuckling my seatbelt. His fingers brushed against my chin, the gesture carrying an indescribable intimacy. "Now, do you still think you need to pretend?" The mountain wind carried the distant chirping of insects. I looked into his eyes, so close they reflected the mountain shadows, and my own unrestrained, wild expression, which I hadn't yet had time to hide. The exhilaration from the scream moments ago still lingers in my throat, and suddenly I laugh, a genuine, heartfelt laugh that doesn't require forcing a smile. "Harry, you're such a madman." He raises an eyebrow, grinning even more roguishly. "Better to go crazy once in a while than to hold it all in, right? At the very least, from now on, I hope that when you're with me, you can just be yourself." I didn't answer. Instead, I looked up and kissed him, giving him the wildest response. After that racing incident, my relationship with Harry has grown much closer, and now he's messaged me again. "Harry, I saw your fiancé." Following that was a clear photo of a kiss. "Oh, it seems like an unpleasant piece of news." I calmly clicked on the photo. Under the dim light, the two were passionately kissing. The man was handsome, the woman beautiful, as if sparks were about to fly any second, making one's mouth go dry just by looking. "Oh, it's actually my sister." It looks like the two of them have rekindled their old flame. I never expected that I wouldn't have to go looking for trouble with her. She just handed me the leverage herself. Just then, another message popped up. "I have some even more explosive stuff here, but I'm afraid it might be too much for your eyes. Send it over." As I looked at these increasingly shocking pictures one after another, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. "I heard that my dear sister has been having a very unpleasant married life with Simon lately, and she even slapped Simon's mother last week. Now the Smith family is in utter chaos. Well, it's time to call off the engagement." I looked at these increasingly shocking pictures before me, my fingertips sliding across the cold phone screen, finally stopping at the send button. Without the slightest hesitation, I packaged the most impactful photos, along with the time and location notes provided by Harry, and precisely sent them to Jack and my father. The air in the study seemed to freeze. Mr. Miller stood with his back to me, in front of the huge floor-to-ceiling window, beyond which lay the bustling yet cold city nightscape. The screen of the tablet in front of him was still lit, displaying that thunder and fire kiss photo, glaringly clear. "Did you send this?" His voice was low, betraying no emotion, but his tense posture hinted at the storm to come. "Yes," I admitted calmly, my voice steady and unruffled. He turned around abruptly, his sharp gaze cutting like a blade. "What do you want?" "Break off the engagement." 2 words, spoken with resounding force. "Nonsense." Mr. Miller slammed his palm on the heavy desk, producing a dull, thunderous sound. "Do you have any idea how many interests are tied to the marriage alliance between the Taylor and Miller families? Without the Taylors' support, the funding chain, the West City project, the old foxes on the board eyeing us greedily, which one of these won't become a problem? The Miller family can't withstand such turmoil right now." His fury was to be expected. I met his gaze without flinching, instead curling a cold smile. "Problems? Then let the problems fall on the Taylor family's side. Father, rest assured, I will handle all the issues, and I will make the Taylors pay a far greater price for their mistake than the marriage alliance itself." Mr. Miller stared at me intently, as if weighing the gravity of my words. Only the sound of his heavy breathing remained in the study. 3 days later, at the top floor of the Taylor Group, in the CEO's office, the air was as cold as an ice cellar. Jack sat behind the large desk, his face ashen. Spread out before him was the exact compensation agreement I had proposed, which could only be described as harsh. It involved the transfer of profits from multiple key projects, the division of market share, and a reputation loss fee that was nearly astronomical. "Miss Miller, leave some room for compromise." He practically gritted his teeth as he forced out these words. "Taylor Corp cannot accept all these terms." I sat comfortably on the sofa opposite him, my fingertips lightly tapping the armrest as if admiring an interesting exhibit. "Mr. Taylor," I smiled, though the warmth didn't reach my eyes, "it seems you haven't quite grasped the situation. I'm not here to bargain with you. Sign it. Let the Millers issue the announcement, and we'll dissolve the engagement with dignity. Everyone walks away unscathed." Or, I deliberately paused, took out my phone, unlocked the screen, and hovered my fingertip over the send button. On the screen, the faint Outlines of even more unsavory thumbnails were visible. Let me help you make a choice. How about letting the entire city's media give you and my dear sister a grand publicity campaign for your deeply moving past romance? I'm sure the Smith family and the shareholders of Taylor Corp would be very interested. Jack's pupils suddenly contracted, and the veins on his forehead bulged. He couldn't bear to see his cherished one tarnished like this, nor could he accept the damage to his own reputation. Even if all that remained of his reputation was that pitiful little bit, he stared intently at my phone, then looked at the agreement, as if weighing 2 layers of hell. The office was eerily silent, with even the sound of air movement gone. After a long, suffocating silence, he suddenly grabbed the pen on the desk with such force that it seemed he might crush it. He practically threw himself onto the agreement, signing his name with frantic and ferocious strokes, filled with endless humiliation. You'd better keep your word. He threw down the pen, his voice hoarse. Of course, I tucked away the copy of the agreement, my smile graceful and appropriate. Pleasure doing business, Mr. Taylor. See you in the announcement. 2 days later, the Miller Group and the Taylor Group jointly issued a statement, announcing the peaceful dissolution of my engagement with Jack on the grounds of incompatibility. The wording of the statement was official and dignified, concealing all turmoil beneath. Its calm phrasing, even if this reason is utterly absurd. Meanwhile, within the Taylor Group, a fierce exchange of interests was quietly taking place. Several key project accounts of the Miller family silently received massive inflows of funds. On the afternoon the announcement was made, the sunlight was just right. I sat in my spacious, bright office, watching the online discussions about the peaceful breakup begin to gain momentum. A gentle swipe on the tablet selected the gift package Harry had sent, something I had never shared with anyone before. It contained not only intimate photos from more angles but also a clearly documented timeline of their secret rendezvous, even included a blurry yet recognizable video clip of my dear sister in a heated argument with Simon, slapping his mother across the face. Without a moment's hesitation, I anonymously sent this gift package to the inboxes of all the most influential gossip editors in the city. After doing all this, I picked up the coffee beside me and took a small sip. The bitter richness spread across my tongue. After all, I am no gentleman. I set down the coffee cup and looked out the window at the bustling scene of heavy traffic, my eyes showing not a ripple of emotion. The real show has only just begun. The news of Taylor Group's frantic struggles and its stock price plummeting became the top headline in both the finance and gossip sections. Jack's frantic efforts to put out fires everywhere and his constant state of exhaustion have almost become an open joke within the circle. Meanwhile, at the center of the storm, I was comfortably seated in Harry's top-floor office with its stunning view. I win, a pure straight flush. Pay up, pay up. I pushed the tiles in front of me aside with flair, grinning from ear to ear as I extended my hand toward Harry and his 2 trusted subordinates at the table. Sis, your luck is just too good. Jason, the younger brother sitting across from me, wailed as he pulled out his wallet. Harry, you're making it way too obvious. You're feeding her every card she wants. Another younger brother, John, chimed in with a laugh. Exactly. Harry's playing style is practically handing the money right to her. Sis, your skills and your presence are just amazing. No wonder Harry has been so devoted to you all these years. I was happily collecting the money, my fingers brushing against the cool bills, when John's words, has been so devoted to you all these years, hit me like a stone dropped into a calm lake, instantly. Rippling through my mind, what? The smile on my face froze, and I instinctively looked up at John, then sharply turned to Harry, filled with utter confusion and a hint of panic I hadn't even noticed. For many years, the air seemed to instantly freeze. The crisp sound of mahjong tiles clashing vanished. John and Jason exchanged a glance, their faces showing the regret of oops, I let it slip. But their eyes simultaneously darted toward Harry, carrying a hint of testing and a bro, you handle this vibe. Harry's peach blossom eyes, which had been filled with indulgent laughter, now flickered with a barely noticeable trace of tension. He first pretended to glare at John in annoyance and scolded in a low voice, "Can't you just keep your mouth shut?" Getting a little cocky after winning some money. "Get out of here, now." John and Jason felt as if they had been granted a pardon and immediately stood up. Jason even managed to grin and add, "Sis, don't get the wrong idea, Harry hasn't so much as touched another woman all these years. He's been waiting for you. We'll get going now, right away." With that, the two of them slipped away as quickly as if they had oil on their soles. In an instant, the vast office was left with just Harry and me. The space that had been bustling and lively just moments before was now so quiet that I could hear the hum from outside the window and my own somewhat erratic heartbeat. Harry sat across from me, not wearing his usual casual, flirtatious Smiled. He lowered his eyes slightly, his slender fingers unconsciously rubbing a mahjong tile. The warm yellow light fell on his sharply defined profile, revealing a rare hint of awkwardness and seriousness. I cleared my somewhat dry throat, my voice much softer than usual. Have you always liked me? Harry raised his head, and those peach blossom eyes, always full of flirtation, now clearly reflected my figure. Gone was the usual frivolity in them, only a deep and focused light remained. Like a tranquil sea, he somewhat sheepishly touched his high, straight-nosed bridge, a faint, almost imperceptible blush seeming to spread to the roots of his ears. Then, softly yet firmly, he responded with a single word. That one word, as if carrying the weight of 1,000 pounds, landed heavily on my heart. It was not teasing, not a joke. Seriously, those past fragments, he always appeared just when I needed him most. Those seemingly casual acts of protection, those gestures I interpreted as friendship, loyalty, or young Master Harry's idle pastimes, now carry a brand new, burning meaning. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I just looked at him. He looked back at me, his gaze so intense it seemed to pierce through time, returning to the moment he first fell for me. There was a strange tension in the air, ambiguous, probing, and with a hint of relief, as if the dust had finally settled. He stood up but didn't approach immediately. Instead, he walked around the mahjong table and took a seat beside me. As the distance closed, the faint, crisp scent of cedar mixed with tobacco became more distinct, no longer just a superficial fragrance. Did I scare you? He turned his head to look at me, his voice low and soft, carrying a hint of barely noticeable caution. A little unexpected, I said honestly, my fingertips curling unconsciously. I thought I was just a playboy, treating everyone this way. He gave a self-deprecating smile, but his gaze remained firmly fixed on me. That's because you once said you find those sunny, outgoing, even a bit flirtatious people more interesting. The dull ones you find boring. The floodgates of memory were pried open just a crack. This seemed to be a casual remark made during a boring afternoon in high school, while chatting with a close friend. So, you turned yourself into this? I looked at him in disbelief. No wonder everyone in the circle says young Master Harry seemed like a completely different person overnight. He responded again, this time with a hint of helplessness and frankness, thinking, if I could become the way you like, would that bring me a little closer to you? He paused, his gaze growing even deeper, tinged with a hint of helplessness. All those so-called romantic affairs over the years were just for show. I never touched them. He leaned in close, his warm breath almost brushing against my ear, carrying an unprecedented seriousness and nervousness. Those peach blossom eyes, always brimming with laughter, were now filled with undisguised anticipation and a hint of fragility. As if awaiting judgment, I looked at the dazed reflection of myself in his eyes, and the hardened, frozen corners of my heart, forged by vengeance, seemed to soften ever so slightly under the intensity of his gaze, a gaze that had remained unwavering for years. Time seemed to stretch endlessly in that moment. The neon lights outside the window flickered, tracing the handsome contours of his face, so close at hand. I didn't speak, only reached out my hand, my fingertips gently brushing against the slightly reddened knuckles he had unconsciously rubbed while handling the mahjong tiles. This subtle gesture made Harry's breath catch abruptly, and in an instant, his peach blossom eyes lit up with an extraordinarily brilliant glow, more dazzling than all the lights outside the window. He turned his hand, cautiously, with a slight tremble, yet with unwavering firmness, and grasped my fingertips. I took over the family business. In my previous life, after I married Simon, I was ousted from the management, and the entire family business fell into Lydia's hands. Later, when Lydia died in a car accident, the Miller family was directly merged with the Taylor family. Now that it has been handed over to me this time, I will naturally carry forward the Miller family and live up to my mother's efforts. The monotonous routine of a three-point life was dull and tedious, and the busyness almost made me forget that couple who hadn't been completely dealt with that day. As soon as I stepped out of the office building, a heavy sense of despondency hit me. It was Simon. He looked like a withered tree utterly broken by a violent storm. Though not yet 30, his temples were already streaked with stark white hair. He had become so emaciated that even his once expensive suit hung loosely and crumpled on him, exuding a decaying aura of someone nearing the end of their life. Sarah. That piercing and affectionate call made my temples throb violently and my stomach churn, as an ominous premonition instantly shot up my spine. Sure enough, the next second, the man who had once been so arrogant in front of me seemed to have all his bones pulled out, and he fell to his knees with a heavy thud on the cold, hard marble floor. Good heavens, I curse under my breath, my body reacting faster than my mind, nimbly leaping aside with a large step, the movement as swift as if dodging some deadly virus. What a joke. Who would dare accept a bow from a despicable turtle king? What's wrong with You. I looked down at him from above, my brows furrowed tightly, revealing undisguised disgust. I never expected that he would suddenly lunge forward, grabbing my just-moved calf with both hands in a death grip. Wah! He burst into loud, unrestrained sobs like a 3-year-old child, his face smeared with snot and tears. Sorry, Sarah. Sorry, wife. It's all my fault. In my past life, I shouldn't have treated you like that. I was heartless. I was blind. Hit me, scold me, even kill me if you want. I just beg you to forgive me. Sob, sob. Past life. My pupils suddenly contracted. This guy has actually been reborn too. You have no idea. That shrew Lydia, she's a lunatic, a devil, he wailed, his voice hoarse and broken, filled with bone-deep fear and hatred. She's not half as good as you. Not only did she openly cheat, but she also destroyed my home. She turned the Smith family upside down. She's nothing but a jinx, honey. Please come back. Let's start over. I'll give you anything, even my life if you want. Start over. I was so infuriated by his shameless remarks that I laughed in disbelief. Simon, did Lydia knock your brain out, or are you just that stupid? Without hesitation, I raised my foot and prepared to kick this filthy thing out with all my strength. Bang! A dull thud, mixed with the crisp sound of bone hitting something hard, landed on him a split second before I could. A foot clad in a gleaming handmade leather shoe, carrying the force of a thunderbolt, struck Simon's body with brutal force. The force was so great that it sent him tumbling sideways, rolling several times like a ragged sack before finally coming to a stop. Ow! Simon let out a pig-like shriek of agony, clutching his kicked arm as he curled up on the ground, writhing in pain. The restraint on my foot vanished instantly. A tall and imposing figure, exuding a chilling cold, stood like a sudden iceberg, firmly blocking the path between me and the puddle of mud on the ground. Harry had appeared out of nowhere, his face dark enough to drip with gloom. Those usually charming, smiling peach blossom eyes were now filled with terrifying shards of ice. His sharp gaze, like a tangible blade, cut fiercely into Simon. He leisurely straightened the slightly disheveled cuff of his suit jacket, a movement that was elegant yet carried an aura of terrifying menace. He leaned forward slightly, looking down at Simon, who was writhing and groaning on the ground. His voice was not loud, but it was as cold as the Siberian wind, each word carrying a chill that could freeze one to the bone. Who are you calling darling? He paused, a dangerously cold and utterly unfeeling smirk curling at the corner of his lips, and added, her name. Do you, a piece of trash, even deserve to say it? He's not even worth dirtying her hands. Simon was finally taken away by Lydia. I heard they had a fierce argument after they got back. But that has nothing to do with me now. I'm currently planning my wedding with Harry. Are you sure you want to marry into my family? I hesitated as I looked at all the salary cards and property disclosure proofs he had submitted, feeling slightly stunned. Of course, Harry gently kissed my forehead. Nothing is more important than you. On the day of the wedding, I heard that Simon went mad and drove his car into the carriage where Jack and Lydia were fooling around, killing all 3 of them on the spot. I laughed softly. This was, for me, the second best wedding gift. What? You're asking me about the best wedding gift? I glanced down at the man lying beneath me, wrapped up like a gift, and flashed a wicked smile. Isn't it right here? After hearing the stories above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.